What's up, Pewter peeps, and welcome into the all-new Pewtercast, your place for Bucs news, notes, analysis, hot takes, and maybe some other takes that may not be so hot. That's Ren. You know him. I'm Steve Carney. It is great to have you here on a special Tuesday evening version of the Pewtercast. It's only been a couple of days since we streamed last, but we had to do a little bit of a change here. If you're watching us live on YouTube or on Twitter and Periscope or on the pewtercast.live. And that is because for me, Thursday is a very important day for me. And that is because it is opening day in Major League Baseball. And my other job has to come into fruition as well. But Ren, how was your weekend? I know that this was a nice, relaxing weekend with almost everything starting to round into shape as we get ready for the draft.
Yeah, it was, weekend's been fine. It's been good, comings and goings, paying bills, watching TV, going to work, that type of stuff, But, I thought before today, I didn't know there was going to be a presser. And, I'm kind of putting notes together, throughout the week. Well, for these 4 days for the show. And, I'm thinking, this might be a light one. We might need Carney to fill some time here. But BA came out with the presser, and someone asked him about the draft and what type of players you're looking for, and he goes speed on defense. So I was like, well, let's go look for guys that are gonna be there that have speed on defense. So basically, he was talking about special teamers. Now, I still think that the Bucs are going to be looking, possible cornerback if somebody falls there, interior offensive line, especially in the first 2 days. But, players that could make the team, to fill out the bottom half of the roster, it looks like, you should play defense, and you got to have speed, and you got to, of course, that's going to translate to special teams in a year or two. Then we'll see, we'll see what you got, and see if these guys make an impact.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of those needs here and a couple of guys that we are certainly looking for in the draft here in just a moment. But the 22nd man, Ren, is back. That's right. All 22 starting players from the Super Bowl are returning to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as Leonard Fournette has made it official here this past weekend, as he has signed a deal to come back to Tampa Bay and be the guy that we thought would be complimenting Ronald Jones.
Yeah, I was, both of us have talked about, I guess, the past two pods about how, Le'Veon Bell, I think, would have been a better fit. Some people think he's washed. I don't think that that it was weird, because I was watching this podcast, and one guy was a Jets fan, and they're asking him about, well, what did Bell do? And he's really good receiving back. The other guy goes, but I don't want him, but he was great as a receiving back. And the other guy said that, well, I don't want him, but he's awesome at blocking, picking up the blitz. Well, those are two things that you're looking for in that guy, So, as Alan says in chat already, Bell's toast. Okay, well, you don't know that because I guarantee you didn't watch any Jets games the past 2 years, and he didn't play. Andy Reid didn't hand the ball off last year that much, So, and when he did hand it off, it went to Clyde Edwards-Helaire and not Bell. So, but Fournette's back. So, I guess the big question now is, who's starting? Don't really care. But are we going to get playoff Lenny, or are we going to get regular season Lenny? Because
that's going to be a
very different players.
Yeah, and for people that say that Bell is toast, you're not looking for Bell to be a bell cow back. That's the beauty of it, Alan, is that here we are. We're looking for someone to be the complementary back. We're looking for what Bell did in Kansas City with Edwards-Helaire. He wasn't supposed to be the bell cow guy. Edwards-Helaire was supposed to carry the lion's share of the football, and Bell was supposed to be the guy that was the receiving back. And that's what we were looking for here, is it not? I certainly think that bringing Leonard Fournette back, if we get playoff Lenny, if we get Lombardi Lenny, we'll be very, very happy. And if we don't get Lombardi Lenny, well, then I hope that Rojo becomes the beast that we were all hoping for. Also, a shout out to Steve Munoz, who is in the chat watching us live here on YouTube. So shout out to those. I like that you have at least, they say it's best to deal with the devil you do know as opposed to the devil you don't know.
Right, right.
And having all 22 starters back is, I mean, to me, it's the ultimate dealing with the devil you do know as opposed to the devil you don't know. And the other thing that it does is that it's going to have an effect on what the Bucs are going to do with the drafts, because now they go, okay, if there's not somebody that lights our socks on fire in the position where we are, we can feel free to trade down and look to try and gather some more opportunities either later on in this year's draft or even better in next year's draft. And so I like that we're not having to deal with too much of the unknowns, and we're now here looking at, okay, these are the 22 guys that brought a Lombardi trophy home in early February, and now we can talk about how we're going to have the best opportunity in the NFC this year. Will Kansas City be up there in the AFC? Sure. I think that there's plenty of other teams. I mean, New England went nuts in free agency. Buffalo has done a couple of small things. Pittsburgh has done some things. Cleveland has tried to do some things. Baltimore has tried doing some things. So the AFC,
everyone's tried to do some things.
Well, I'm talking about, you're looking at in the AFC. I think there are more teams that could come out for
AFC is
next
stronger
year's
this
Super
year
Bowl
than the NFC. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
So I think the Bucs have found themselves, just by staying pat and being able to re-sign everything that they have or that they had last year. You're most likely in the driver's seat because everybody else in the NFC is either taking a step back or they are, New Orleans, no Drew Brees. You don't know what you're going to have in quarterback. They're in salary cap hell. The Green Bay Packers, what are they going to do at quarterback now they've got Jordan Love there now, having watched Aaron Rodgers for a year. Aaron Rodgers knows that, that guy is going to be the guy that's going to take my job. Is this the year that Aaron Rodgers tells the front office in Green Bay to go pee up a flagpole and he ends up getting moved? And if he gets moved, where does he get moved to? I mean, there's so many decisions that are still yet to be made, and we're only 2 weeks into the start of the new league year. And so I look at what the Bucs have done by staying pat as being just it's great for the mindset of the Bucs fan.
Yeah, and I don't even I don't even feel comfortable to call it staying pat, because you did have to bring those guys, like they weren't on your team technically. Mm-hmm. But as far as there wasn't sort of an upgrade at certain positions. Like mostly we looked at running back. They could have upgraded somebody for Nunez Roches, in a rotational nose tackle position. I thought that could have been someplace to upgrade. So bringing back the guys that they did, I don't feel that standing pat's the right word for it, but yeah, I mean, people have talked about it on Twitter for a few weeks now. It's like the first time since 1974 or something, and the modern day Super Bowl era, and that was before free agency. So you either didn't sign the player because their contract was out or they retired. So that's how long it's been. But yeah, they got all their pieces in place, and we're coming up to the draft, and they could use some depth at some certain spots, but it may not, just may not be there. So I think that's what was so interesting at BA's presser today, where he was just like, I need speed on defense, and I'm looking for offensive line, defensive line, and then maybe a quarterback. And it was like, okay, that's the first time we've heard anyone in the organization sort of narrow this down for us, since the end of the season. So, it's good to be able to sort of narrow your search and start to look at guys and things like that. But we had other news too.
Yeah, well, we do have other news. We're going to get more football, at least more regular season football here this year, as It came across this afternoon that the National Football League is going officially to a 17-game regular season, and they will reduce the number of preseason games this year from 4 to 3. So it does not, it doesn't mean any more football overall, and there's still going to be 20 games that these guys are going to have to play. It's just that 17 of them are going to count. Kyle Driver, thank you so much for the super chat. He says we could use depth at quarterback, not sold on Gabbert. And I think that you will see some moves at quarterback when it comes to the draft. And I
think
don't
Gabbert
think it's going to be early.
Games. I think Gabbert wins 10, 11 games with this roster.
Well, I mean,
I think he does.
Yeah, I mean, if Matt Castle can win 11 games with the roster that the Patriots had the year that Tom Brady went down with the ACL injury, and I think that
11 games and missed the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they were the last team to win 11 games and miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. But back to the 17 games. So the Bucs get the Colts. We play the AFC South this year. I should say the NFC South plays the AFC South this year.
Yeah.
We get the Colts. It's a road game. So, there's a little bit of a silver lining for this for season ticket holders, at least. So now you're only paying for 2, or next year only paying for 1 preseason game at a regular season price. Yeah. And then next year you'll get the 8th game. Someone put up a graphic of who the Bucs were playing next year, or the NFC South was playing next year. And I should have written it down, but I didn't, but I'll have it for the next pod. But so we get Indianapolis. New Orleans gets a tough draw of Tennessee. Oh, I think Tennessee's going to just run them, mash them. I don't even know if New Orleans has 22 players under contract right now.
And these are all road games for the NFC, because the NFC, the 17th game, the NFC is on the road for all of these as well.
Yes. And next year, the AFC will be all on the road. Atlanta gets an easy one, maybe, in Jacksonville. So
that means Carolina gets Houston.
Yep. So I think that, I think I played out the way it's supposed to, Again, the draft hasn't happened, and these are all projections of seedings, and teams go up and down the division all the time. But if you made me pick one team I didn't want to play, it would have been Tennessee.
Yeah,
and then it would have been Indianapolis. And then I really wouldn't have cared so much between Jacksonville and Houston, to be honest. I think Houston's they're trying, man, but God, bad luck.
Yeah, I think as things stand right now, and things could change between now and the time that this show is over, for crying out loud. But if you're asking me to rank the ones that the teams in the AFC South that I didn't want to play to the teams that I did want to play, it would be Tennessee, Indianapolis, Houston, and then Jacksonville, because I think that as long as Houston has Deshaun Watson, and they may not have Deshaun Watson before the end of this show, but they have him right now, and as long as they do, I would say that that makes Houston more dangerous than Jacksonville, even if Jacksonville, as we all expect, takes Trevor Lawrence with the first overall pick in the draft coming up in a couple of weeks. But I like the ideas of line depth and speed on defense, but line depth, especially on the interior on both sides. And I've got a couple of names here.
Okay.
That I want to go through.
Okay. Before we get into that, I want to go through what 17 games can mean for the record.
Oh.
And then we'll take a break, and we'll come back. We'll get into the meat of the show.
Got to get into the meat.
Okay. So with 17 games, there's a distinct possibility that some of these single season records could fall. Yeah. And fall rather quickly. I picked out a few of these, and I'm going to go and just go down the list, and you tell me if you think that it's a possibility that it will fall this year, or let's say next year too, relatively soon. All right.
Before we get to 18 games, because that's coming.
Right, exactly. And then all these will fall. Okay, so most passing yards in a single season by Peyton Manning. 5,477.
I'm thinking that one is a possibility. I mean, nobody has come within a couple of 100 yards of that since Drew Brees had 5208 in 2016.
Right.
Jameis Winston had 5,109 in his final season with the Buccaneers in 2018, and nobody was in the top 20 when it came to passing yards last year. Nobody had.
Right. But Mahomes is thrown for 5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most.
Wilson.
The most.
Why am I forgetting his first name? Who's the guy that plays quarterback for the Seahawks?
Oh, Russell Wilson.
Jesus. Wilson's thrown for 5,000 yards. Yeah. Of course, Winston. But I guess the one who's really like the one that pops up your head that could possibly do it the soonest would be Mahomes because of the style of offense he plays and how talented he is. So
but I mean, he only threw for 4,700. Right. He led the league in passing yards this past year with 4,740. So to get to 5,477 in one extra game would be quite the accomplishment. It's quite the accomplishment. Could it happen? Sure. I think it could happen. I don't think it will happen next year. Even with the 17th game, I think that you're going to start seeing more and more quarterbacks getting to that 5,000. I mean, remember that it took 20 years for 5,000 from the time that Dan Marino threw for 5,048 yards in 1984 until the next time that somebody got to 5,000 yards. It took a long, long time, and that is certainly not going to that's not going to stay that way. You're going to start seeing more and more quarterbacks getting to that 5,000 yard plateau, and 5,000 yards is going to start becoming the measuring stick.
Yeah, for like 4,000 used to be.
Yeah, just for a not just for all-time greats, but just for very good quarterbacks. You're going to see very good quarterbacks getting to 5,000 yards. It's going to be that 5,500 yards that's going to be you're going to start seeing that's the next milestone. And it almost happened in 16 games. It'll certainly happen in 17, but I don't think it'll happen next year.
Steve, I see your super chat, and we'll talk about it when we come out of the break. All right. Okay. Passing touchdown. Same guy holds them. Peyton Manning, 55.
Yeah. I think that will be broken in the next 2 years.
Okay.
I just see the way that teams now operate inside the 10. You're not going to the jumbo sets. You're going to start seeing more of the short touchdowns, and that's why I think that will end up being broken in the next couple of years.
Yeah, instead of just getting inside the 10 and just pounding the rock 3 times, they're finding the 6'8", well, really like the 6'3", 6'4" wide receiver on the 5'10", 5'11" cornerback, and they're playing basketball, and you got wide receivers that tall, and you got tight ends that tall, and all that. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that one will fall before the yardage one for some reason. It doesn't make sense. Like, I can't really talk about logically. I just feel like it is. Eric Dickerson, 2105 rushing yards.
I don't.
Derrick Henry last year went 2,027.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to 17 games. I think you're going to start seeing teams starting to look more at the 2-back approach more than the bell cow. Just it's an extra game that counts. They're going to want to try and keep guys as fresh as possible. So I have a feeling I don't think you're going to see anybody breaking 2105 over the next 2 years. It could happen, and Derrick Henry is probably the most likely.
Derrick Henry or nobody right now, right?
Yeah,
that's the way offenses are.
I was going to say it's Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley if he's healthy. But what have we learned about Saquon Barkley? Can't stay healthy. So give me it's Derrick Henry or nobody almost.
Yeah.
So I would say no on that one.
Calvin Johnson, 1,964 yards.
So will there be a 2,000-yard receiver in the NFL? I tend to think yes.
I do too.
I think there's going to be a 2,000-yard receiver.
Yeah. Like, getting 1,000 yards as a receiver now is almost like you can't even say you had a good season.
Mike Evans,
that's a great
season. Mike Evans played like half of a season this year. You can remember that
67 yards a game. And now it's
Yeah.
going to drop down even more to get 1,000 yards. 67 yards a game is what gives 1,000 yards at a 16-game season.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a 2,000-yard receiver, and 1,000 yards is going to be like you and I might be able to get 1,000 yards in the NFL in a 17-game season.
Yeah, as long as you throw enough to me, which brings up the next category, which I can't believe this. I remember when Art Monk hit like 90 receptions in a year, and it was a huge deal. But the NFL record was set, I believe, last year, maybe the year before. Michael Thomas from the Saints, 149 catches.
Yeah, just an absolutely ridiculous number. And again, now you're talking about a guy getting 11 targets a game and making 9 catches a game to break that record. It can happen, and there are definitely offenses that will look to do that. So I think there will be a receiver to get to 150 catches. It will be someone like Michael Thomas or Odell Beckham, or there will be someone.
You really got to look at the offenses, like who does, and the quarterbacks running them. Like who doesn't have like sort of a top tier
tight end, like
who doesn't have a tight end, and who doesn't have like a number 2 can be number 1. Then you got to look at the offense, and you got to find the quarterback who plays like Teddy Bridgewater or Alex Smith.
Okay, so then that leads me to Henry Ruggs in Las Vegas.
Okay, all right.
That's a guy you don't have a whole lot around him. Josh Jacobs is okay. Waller
pushback on that. But okay.
Yeah, Darren Waller is a decent tight end, but I think that it's going to be somebody like Henry Ruggs that ends
I like that. Yeah, I think that fits all the parameters. And finally, I don't think this one really affects it at all because people just don't get close that often. Michael Strahan, 22.5.
I mean, you saw what Shaq did 2 years ago, and he was a monster, and he couldn't get to 20. So to get to 22 and to get to that 23rd sack, you almost have to have the quarterback helping you with that.
Like how he got to 22.5.
Maybe. I don't know.
Favre talked to him before the play rolled out, fell down in front of him, and then congratulated him afterwards. It was a total setup, but whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, but so unless someone's going to do unless someone's going to do that for a Shaq or an edge rusher like that.
For anybody to get close, you got to find a tier 1 pass rusher who's going up against a tier 3 tackle, and they got to play him twice, and he's got to get like 6 to 8 sacks in those games. Yeah. Like if you look at some of these, if you go through game to game, like when JPP came to the Bucs and he had something like 8 sacks, but 6 of them were against Washington, and I was like, oh man. And I looked, and it was the same. I don't remember the tackle's name, but it was the same tackle. So he got 6, of his sacks. It was 4 and 2.
Yeah.
And in the 2 games. So I think that's what you're going to have to look for if you're going to look for somebody to approach that 20 mark. Is somebody going to get like 6 and 8, against their division opponent.
And you have to think it's got to be a tier 3 offensive line with a quarterback that still wants to go back and drop back and throw. And for me, there's only one team right now that I can think of that is a tier 3 line with a quarterback that wants to drop back and throw, and that's Detroit. With Jared Goff now with the Detroit Lions, I could see them wanting to throw 60 times a game behind an offensive line that can't protect him.
So Khalil Mack it is.
Exactly.
That's what we're looking at.
Khalil Mack.
Khalil Mack.
There you go.
All
Those
right.
are some pretty good. Those are some pretty good numbers. I like what Ty said that Darren Waller is more likely to break that record than Ruggs. Maybe. I think it's going to be somebody on Vegas that does it.
Nah, no.
That just sounds like a Mark Davis type of thing.
I mean, Darren Waller will have these fantastic games where you're like, oh my God, like how come no one's talking about this guy as tight end one in the league? And then he'll disappear for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just where he is right now. Plus, I think defensive, you can't be the guy. You need somebody else as a tight end to take the pressure off you, because if you're the only guy, then they can just double you on the inside, and with a box safety and a linebacker, and then you're screwed, and he's not going to get all those catches. But I like both those picks. I think it's more Ruggs than it would be Waller. But not by much. So I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our 17 games for this year, but there's still plenty to come before we even get to game number 1. We will talk about current Buccaneers that have a chance at the Hall of Fame, and also some names that could end up being new Bucs that you'll have to learn and get acquainted with, because they are the needs that the Bucs have. We'll do that here next on the PeterCast. So Ren, Steve Munoz super chatted, and I know he did this in the middle of our 17 game projection. So thank you, Steve, for super chatting. He wants to know who is the best chance at the Hall of Fame between Sue, JPP, and Levante David.
That's a tough one. Like, I don't think JPP makes it. I know, he's been a name out there. He's been a name that a lot of people followed down here because he went to USF. I don't know if a lot of people would have known JPP earlier, like if you were a Cowboys fan. Well, maybe a Cowboys fan because you played the Giants. But if you were
a Chargers fan.
Yeah, like JPP would have been just some guy that, okay, he comes around. Oh, he's still starting for the Giants, every 3 years when they were making the Super Bowl. So he hasn't made a lot of Pro Bowls. I think he's got like 2 or 3 or something. So JPP's third for me. I think Sue is close. I think he's really close. He's got a ring. He's going after another one. He was a third overall pick. He was a monster in Detroit, and then played on a bad team in Miami, then went to another Super Bowl with the Rams, and now he's here. And he's not the pass rusher he used to be, but he's still in that top echelon for defensive tackles that can also get off. He might be just outside of the top 5, but he's definitely in the top 10, and doing it at his age, I think that's a possibility. I really think it's going to be Levante David, and I think it's because they won the Super Bowl, and I think it's because Tom Brady's here. And then when he gets to Canton, because I think he's going to get in the room, he's going to get guilt. People are going to guilt the Hall of Fame guys to get him in the room, and when they get him in the room and put his stats up against the Wagners and the Kelseys and the other line, but the Urlachers and the guys that are in the Hall, and you put his numbers up against it, the only thing he's missing are Pro Bowls, which you can argue because it's correct as a popularity vote, and all pros. And it's going to be just because he played for such a crappy team, a crappy organization, really, for his first 8 years. And I think Levante's probably got, let me put it this way. I think Sue's got the best shot. Levante's got the best stats. And I don't think JPP has a chance in hell.
Yeah, I tend to think that the thing about Levante is that he got screwed over for the fact that Luke Kuechly played in the same division for the first 8 years of his career. And, Luke Kuechly was the one who got all the Pro Bowl nominations. He was the one that got all the All-Pros. And so people will go, well, he wasn't the best linebacker in his division. Never mind one of the best linebackers in football, and I tend to disagree with that. I think that
especially when you put the numbers up.
Yeah, Levante David is a guy that is criminally underrated. Criminally,
yes.
Carmen Vitale from Buccaneers.com has championed Levante's cause now for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And, every year Levante gets looked over. And, I think that it is going to be up to Ira Kaufman, who's going to be in the room for for when they have these discussions, and when his name comes up, it's going to be up to Ira to go, Levante David, look at Luke Kuechly's numbers. He's in the hall.
That's not a bad Ira. Ira's hard to do.
Ren, you got to look at Brian Urlacher's numbers there, Ren, and you look at his numbers; they're very similar. And Brian Urlacher, Ren, he's in the hall, Ren. So why don't we get Levante in the hall? So
that's the best Ira I've ever heard, honestly. He's not easy.
This is what happens when you work at WDA, and he comes on with Ronnie and T-Krez, and every time he says T-Krez's name, you have to hit a bell. Which was always the best part. I love Ira to death, and I really think it is going to be imperative, and this is where we're going to see just how good of a salesman Ira Kaufman can be, because getting Leroy Selman in is easy. Yeah. Getting Sapp and Brooks in, easy.
Yeah,
getting John Lynch should have been easy. But
it was a little tougher, but yeah,
people made it. It was a lot more difficult than getting Levante David in. Will be a mark of salesmanship, and I think you're right. JPP, while he's a great edge rusher, he's a very good edge rusher. I think he's on the outside looking in, because edge rushers are a dime a dozen. I mean, for you to get in as an edge rusher, I still
can't believe Jason Taylor made it, let alone first ballot. I just don't get that one.
That's all political. You know that
Jason political. Then John Lynch should have got in 5 years ago.
He should have gotten in 5 years ago. No, Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor, just for me, I mean, I get it. I get why people wanted Jason Taylor in. He was a very good edge rusher and defensive lineman. Was he the guy that you went, that's the man, that's the guy?
I was surprised he was in the room and he made first ballot. I was like, Jason Taylor's in the room? Really? I'm like, okay. And then
he got in?
And he got it first ballot. Like, first ballot guy's like a yes, It's like Calvin Johnson, yes. Like, he goes. Peyton Manning, yes. He goes.
First ballot guys, you shouldn't even have to stand up and make a speech.
Exactly.
Like, I present Calvin Johnson.
And sit down. Sit back down. And that's it.
Any discussion.
Yeah, like how Ira got Sapp and Brooks in.
Yeah.
I'm here to present Warren Sapp. It's not Ira.
To the distinguished voters of the Pro Football Hall of Fame and David Baker, I present Derek Brooks.
All right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, anyway, I don't know. We kind of went off the rails a little bit there. But, so those are our thoughts, Steve, on Sue, JPP, and David. But we have some thoughts on some other players as well.
That are gonna end up being part of the Buccaneers as the draft comes up here in a couple of weeks. And Bruce Arians,
I'm not guaranteeing they're gonna be. I mean,
well,
if you want to guarantee your list are gonna be Bucs,
no.
Right,
we guarantee that there are going to be new names that are going to come out from the draft. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
that's all I'm saying.
The Bucs will come away with the draft draft picks.
The Bucs will come away with draft picks. You can mark that down. Write it down in pen and underline it. No, but
all right, well, we've done our job here. Good night, folks.
That's right. That's right. Like, share, and subscribe. No, but the needs we mentioned. BA talked about speed on defense. He mentioned depth of the line. He mentioned a quarterback.
Right.
I've got a name, and most of the offensive linemen are, you look at big name offensive linemen from big colleges, from the Power Five. Big Ten linemen are always going to be picked high.
Right.
When you talk about Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa, like Tristan Wirfs, Wisconsin, those guys are all going to be picked high. And a lot of teams that are picking high up in the draft are still looking for outside guys. They want guys on the edge of the tackle of the tackle box. They're looking for a right tackle. They're looking for a left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a guy that is right in Jason Light's wheelhouse.
Oh, let's hear it.
His name is Quinn Miners.
Yes.
I mean, you want to talk about a guy that is right in Jason Light's wheelhouse.
This is it.
An interior offensive lineman from a Division III school. This guy went to the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater.
Purple and white. What are they? Oh, man, I forgot what their mascot was. They're like the Fighting Sea Wolves or something. That's not close. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Fighting Feudal Lords or something like that. But I mean, think about it. I mean, this is a guy that's drafted Ali Marpet and Alex Kappa already.
And went and signed Jensen, who was from Colorado State Pueblo.
Yeah. I mean, this guy is right in Jason Light's wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And I look at him and a guy that has played guard, and then in one of the bowl games, was it the Senior Bowl that he was in, that he played center for the first time and impressed people.
Yeah.
So a guy that can play guard and can play center, and you're looking at a guy, the Warhawks. Thank you, Ty.
That was it. Very, very like Little League football.
Yes, that's exactly the Warhawks, the Wisconsin Whitewater Warhawks, the WWWs,
the Little Warhawks, Little
Warhawks,
Junior Warhawks,
the midget Warhawks, the junior midget
Whitewater midget Warhawks.
Oh, Lord help us. We're gonna but I mean this guy ticks all the boxes for me.
Yeah,
Quinn Miners, Wisconsin Whitewater.
That's something.
That's what I want.
Yeah, that's a guy that Bucs fans have heard of since the Senior Bowl. And he fits the mold, and he's one of those guys who will like fight you in a phone booth. You don't. You're going down a dark alley. You want him on your side. Just that guy that you want to bring to a fight. Kind of sort of in the Ryan Jensen mold. Plus, he has red hair like Ryan Jensen. So. And being from like you said, from a small school, like it is right
in Jason Light's wheelhouse.
Yeah. I went with my list. I went all defense. I went defense and guys with special teams. And what I focused on was speed, because that was the first thing out of BA's mouth was like, I want like speed. We're looking for speed because we think that speed will eventually translate on defense to a good player. So obviously these players are going to have to play special teams. So I looked at places where the Bucs have a need, a future need, and that we're fast guys. So I went up and looked at the fastest 40 times for cornerbacks. Now a lot of them were guys that aren't going to be there even at the 32nd pick. Now the kid out of Northwestern, Newsom, he might be there, and he was a top 540 speed. The list I saw, and this is changing every day. There's a couple of pro days today and things like that. So, but a guy that I looked at, his name's Aubrey Thomas. He's out of Michigan. He didn't play last year, so that could knock him down, people's boards, because he hasn't played football for a year. He ran a 4.37 40. He's from Michigan, and the Draft Network, TDN, as we all know, has him ranked as their 140th prospect overall. So I thought that would be a guy, from what I heard from BA today, to fit the mold that the Bucs could be looking at in day 2, because they might have him higher. I'm not looking at round 1, probably not even round 2, but he could be like a round 3 and a day 3 pick. I also have a couple of really like Ryan Smith type guys, like 5th, 6th rounds, and I'll go over them real quickly. Nate Hobbs out of Illinois. He ran a 4.38, and he TDN has him at 249 as a prospect. And then Tyler Gillespie ran a 4.38 as well. He's out of Missouri, and they have him at 194 TDN as a prospect. But those last 2 guys are really guys that like are Ryan Smith. Like you don't really want them on the field the first year, maybe even the first 2 years as a starter. If someone gets hurt, you got to do what you got to do. Kind of like with Ryan Smith, who, by the way, went to the Chargers, everyone. So we've lost a couple of special teamers and a backup safety so far, and Haig and Ryan Smith. And the best thing about Ryan Smith leaving is now I can quit following him on Instagram. I've never seen a guy who takes more pictures of himself in clothes than Ryan Smith.
That's funny.
Yeah. So
here's a name that could be late day 2, early day 3.
What position?
At corner.
Okay.
So you're looking at a guy and a guy that has a ton of experience being around the NFL already, and that's Asante Samuel at Florida State. You know, he's going to be a guy. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a guy probably late day 2, early day 3. He ran a 4.48 40, so he's not blowing the doors off when it comes to 40 time, but that's a guy. You know, much like you got with Antoine Winfield, you know, a guy that's got a ton of experience being around the pro game, you know, growing up. And so I like that. I like that idea as well. And, you know, he's a guy that's you're not going to probably use on the outside. He's probably going to be a nickel corner and a special teams guy. I think that's another guy that you could look at being, an eyeball later on. In the draft, whether it's late on day 2 or early in day 3, especially if the Bucs decide to move down from 32, because you're going to probably get an extra pick for moving down out of the first round.
Yeah, and you know it's always it always makes Bucs fans happy when a Florida State or a Florida school, but especially Florida State. At least my Twitter followers seem to be all Florida State fans, which is I don't know how that happened. But it did somehow. I guess they're just more active. And then sticking with speed for the guys that I looked at, then I went to linebacker because we talked about that even, off-ball linebacker might be a spot at 32 because Avonte David basically told the Bucs, like, hey, I want to play 2 more years. That's it. And then you heard Jason Light again talk about, hey, we're going to draft these guys. They may not help us now, but in 2 years, we're sure glad we have them. So not necessarily first rounders, these guys at all, or second rounders, but they're fast and they play defense. I got Shaka Toney. That's awesome. Out of Penn State. He was always the other edge rusher coming out of Penn State that played alongside. There's a couple of guys edge rushers out of Penn State that have been drafted. He was the other guy on the other side. I think he's more suited for an off-ball linebacker than the edge because the trait that you need that makes you special at edge is bend. It's kind of like bendability, be able to, put your foot in the ground and just wrap around a tackle. And that's just kind of what he lacks. But everything you want in a off-ball linebacker, as in cover sideline to sideline. He's got the speed for that, has some sand in his pants, can sift through sort of the trash, be able to get to the ball carrier and not be affected by what's going on around him. And he ran a 4.55. And then these guys are total projects. Like these guys would be like Jack Sitchies, Devontae Bond types. Oh man, my handwriting. I got even when I write it down, I've been doing this for years. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to read that later, write it a little clearer, and
write it better. I'll give you 2 guys that I think, being in a 3-4, these are guys that I think could end up being types that could turn into edge rushers. They could end up putting their hands on the ground. These are both guys. Actually, I think both of them are out of Notre Dame too. Which is pretty interesting, and that's Ogundeji and Dalen Hayes. Both of them, project to being outside linebackers, guys that are big. I mean, you look at Hayes is 6'3" and 260. Ogundeji is 6'4", 253. These are guys that I think they may not end up being the true off-ball linebacker that you're looking at, but a guy that they could end up being outside, could shifted out to the outside and be the opportunity to maybe be a guy that could turn into a guy that could put his hand on the ground as a 3-4 outside linebacker.
Yeah, and we know how Todd Bowles likes guys sort of like hybrid guys.
Mm-hmm.
We saw, during the playoff push, they lined up Vita Vea outside at one point. We saw Devin White lining up as an edge rusher during the season. Of course, the biggest spot where he likes to, switch guys up is when he brings a safety down to play nickel corner or set the edge in the run.
Yeah, and these guys, I think are guys that could go back and cover tight ends and stuff like that. I mean, these guys aren't going to be.
Yeah,
they're not blown away speed wise. I mean, I think they're 4.7s or something like that. But for guys that you can use in that hybrid, and I like the fact that they're tall and they can get into passing lanes if need be, and they can hopefully move edge to edge if need be. We'll see what happens. I kind of like the idea, and those are a couple of other guys. Again, big school, in the Midwest. I kind of like that. I kind of like that feel being at Notre Dame. They should be ready for the big stage. And they probably could also be willing to play special teams because they're going to be projected third day guys.
Yeah, everybody better be willing to make special teams on this roster, or you ain't making it. I do have one name I can read as far as linebacker.
Yay!
Monte Rice, ranked 166 on TDN's big board. He's out of Georgia. He's more of a Quan Alexander mold, sideline to sideline guy. So, in a couple of years when Levante David moves on, we can have two really athletic, fast inside guys as he sort of develops behind those two. He was a guy you mentioned recovering tight end. He was a guy who showed those type of flashes where he could get out in the flat and not necessarily, I would say, cover a running back, but he can stop him. Like, he doesn't get juked out of his shoes. He makes the stop. He has enough speed to get out there on a flare pass, break down, and be able to make the tap on running backs, be able to cover tight ends, in the shallow crosses and things like that. So Monte Rice out of Georgia was a guy. I have a safety, but he was such a project. I'm just going to erase him right now, but he's huge. He's 6'3", 226 and he's not really that fast. You're on a 4.42. Like, there's not a lot of fast safeties this year. But I did want to talk about quarterback.
Yes.
And if we're like, okay, we're not getting the top 4, okay, and probably not the top 5. Like, Mac Jones probably not going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about on the show about Kyle Trask. As soon as he lost Pitts and Tony, he became a very ordinary quarterback. Once he got his first round NFL targets taken away from him, he wasn't nearly the same guy. So I started looking, and I started going down the list, and I ran into this guy named Davis Mills out of Stanford.
Yeah.
Yep. He's the classic, sit in the pocket, has some mobility, great size, good arm. But he's very shifty in the pocket, almost Tom Brady-esque. So in the later rounds, I don't even know when somebody like Mills would go. I don't think it would be the second, probably the third.
No, I
maybe further down.
I think Walter Football has him 3 to 5. Maybe 4 to 6.
Yeah.
So you're looking like very end of day 2. They have him 4 to 6. Walter Football does.
So those group of guys that are after Trask, this is the guy that I sort of gravitated for. It was David Mills out of Stanford. Might be somebody, the Bucs might be looking at as a young guy to start grooming behind Brady.
Yeah, there's another guy that's around that same spot, and that's Jamie Newman from Wake Forest. He was at Georgia and transferred from Georgia to Wake Forest. He did not play last year. He decided he was just going to prepare for the draft, and then kind of pooped his way through the Senior Bowl. So,
Whoops.
yeah. So certainly not what you want. But I mean, this guy had, 61% of passes completed in 2019 in Georgia with Georgia, 26 touchdowns, did have 11 interceptions, 6 rushing touchdowns, had almost 500 yards on the ground.
Yeah, he's a dual threat guy.
Yeah.
A lot of people have looked at Kellen Mond too at
Texas A&M. He's Jameis. He's Jameis. He's a bad Jameis Winston. He's a poor man. I mean, I saw people comparing him to Colin Kaepernick, and I'm like, okay. So
yeah,
no,
but that's what we got.
I mean, the other thing is if you want a guy with an arm, you could always go with Peyton. If you're looking for cannon arm, you go Peyton Ramsey, Northwestern. So
it's true. So there's lots of guys out there. Those are just. Did you have any more? Sorry.
No, that's. Yeah. I saw Mond. I saw Davis Mills,
right.
Newman, and then I saw they had Peyton Ramsey of Northwestern. Walter Football did underneath him. They have him end of the third day,
right?
Because he's a Northwestern quarterback.
So that's what we got. And so how about you take us out and we'll come back and we'll finish this thing up.
Absolutely. Jameis Winston. You didn't think we'd say his name more than once in this segment, but Jameis Winston making comments about the Buccaneers and the Tampa Bay market losing a icon in broadcasting today. Here, we'll talk about that and more coming up on the PeterCast. So Jameis Winston, Ren, is starting to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There was an article that came out.
Is he taking Gerald McCoy's cue?
Well, he didn't say that he wanted to come back. Let's just put it that way. He was asked about Drew Brees and all the like, but he he did say that he was happy for his former teammates that won the Super Bowl and that he had been in contact with a number of them when it comes to this offseason so far to congratulate them all on winning the Super Bowl. And he talked about how hopefully it'll be his turn to hoist the Lombardi trophy. I say to that, not so soon, not so fast, my friend. But I just think it almost sounded to me like sour grapes that Jameis Winston got tossed to the side for Tom Brady, and Tom Brady led his team because not much changed on offense other than the quarterback. And all of a sudden they find themselves hoisting the Lombardi trophy. I just thought that was very, very interesting that Jameis Winston is starting to spout off about it. It's kind of like the people that say that, I don't know if you're the type of guy that said that Gruden won with Dungy's team. No. Okay. So I just thought it was very. It almost seems like he's like, oh well, Brady won with my team, and it's like that's not your team anymore, there, Jameis, and your team didn't do diddly squat anyway.
Okay, so I think I'm going to put the Jameis Winston ban back in effect.
Yes.
So,
yes,
good to hear from you, James. Thank you. It was good talk. Good talk.
Yes.
But speaking of quarterbacks,
don't let the door hit. Yeah, don't let the door hit you on the ass. It's on the way out.
Probably didn't. So I saw a tweet that somebody was asking NFL executives, whatever that means, what they would give up for Sam Darnold, who, of course, is the quarterback in waiting to get his job replaced during the NFL draft because the Jets had the second pick overall.
Yeah.
And they were talking like third or fourth rounder. So my question to you is, now the Buccaneers went and got Josh Rosen for nothing, hung around for most of the year. Then San Francisco came a-calling, took him away. I would think that Sam Darnold is a better prospect than Davis Mills. I haven't studied Davis Mills. I haven't obviously seen Davis Mills in the pros, but Sam Darnold was a, number one, or I shouldn't say number one, but a first round draft pick at one point.
Yeah.
David Mills isn't going to be anywhere close to that. So what would you give up to be? Well, first off, do you think it's a good idea? And if so, I guess that would really shape it. Because if you think it's a good idea, you probably tend to give up a little more than if you think it's a terrible idea, where you give up to maybe nothing. So where do you fall on Sam Darnold as a Buccaneer?
I do not like the idea. I mean, I didn't like them going out and getting Josh Rosen, other than the fact that he was going to be on the practice squad. Now, if you're going to tell me that we can put Sam Darnold on the practice squad, I might be a little more amenable to it. But for me, I'm not going out and getting Sam Darnold to be Tom Brady's backup. I don't.
Well, what about
like
Ryan Griffin? What if he takes Ryan Griffin's spot
as the third inactive quarterback,
emergency break glass guy?
Yeah, the guy that plays the second half of Game 3 now of the preseason.
Yes, and probably the fourth quarter of preseason Game 1 and. How many
picks in the 7th round do the Bucs have this year?
I mean, don't even worry about it. Like, just put a number on it. I mean, it doesn't matter what the Bucs have or not.
No, I would maybe go with a day 3. But it would have to be
fourth rounder, fifth rounder.
I don't know if a 4th or a 5th would do it. I think it would have to be probably 5, 6, or 7.
Okay.
If maybe a 6 and a 7, but
so a 5th.
Okay. I'll go with it. Depends on how many 7s they have.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I would say that 5, 6. I would say probably, because right now the book's out on Sam Darnold. I mean, they know that
he played for the Jets. I mean, look what happened to Todd Bowles in New York.
That's you make a very
I'm a big believer in, like, it really matters where you land, and I think there are tier 1 coaching staffs in NFL, and then I think there are crappy coaching staffs in NFL, and I don't think there's really a lot in between. Like, if you have the coaches, like, I've always said that Patrick Mahomes is great. Patrick Mahomes would not be who Patrick Mahomes is today if he didn't go and get hooked up with Andy Reid. Like,
if he had been stuck with like Ben McAdoo or
the Jets,
or the Jets,
I
think, if you think about it, I mean, that was that the year that they had everybody go in the because there was the year that Rosen and Josh Allen, and I think that was the Sam Darnold draft as well.
Darnold, Rosen, and Mayfield,
and Baker, and Josh Allen.
Was it Josh Allen? Then Mahomes.
Yeah, Josh Allen was. I forget if Mahomes was in that year or the year after, but there was that. If you think about it, like, you have those drafts where you get all those quarterbacks, and some of them turn out to be okay, and some of them turn out to be garbage, and then you have drafts like,
Russell Wilson in the third.
Russell Wilson in the third. But I was going to say, and then you have Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota being drafted 1, 2, and they're both. I'm sorry, I just broke the band, but but to make the point that you drafted quarterbacks the first 2 overall, and they both turned out to be absolute garbage.
Yeah.
So
I would think Jameis Winston absolute garbage tour. I'm not there. I mean, I'm disappointed. I think he can't get out of his own way a lot of times. I think the football IQ and the talent is there.
But I mean,
there's just something in his head that he won't.
Both
he just
of those
thinks he
guys
can do it. He can't.
Both of those guys had to take massive pay cuts to stay in the league.
Yeah.
Massive pay cuts to stay in the league.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying they worked out. I'm just not comfortable on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast going to sit there and let you slide by with Jameis Winston's garbage without saying anything. That's all.
All right, maybe I should have used Jamarcus Russell then.
Yes, that would, one of the biggest busts of all time for sure.
But for Sam Darnold, I mean, I would think that a 5th round pick is sufficient, would be sufficient.
And give up a 4th. I'm gonna Ryan Suckup you.
You're gonna Ryan Suckup me?
4th is too much. So if you give up a fifth, I mean, a man who would give up a fifth for a previously drafted first round quarterback would definitely give up a fourth for a day 3, especially in this draft.
Yeah, this draft is really weird though, because like
it just stinks for us. We're good at what we're set at and deep at. That's what this draft is good at.
I know.
And we just and where we need depth, it's not. But we could reach and
I hate reaching.
Yeah,
I hate reaching.
Yeah,
but
it never works out well.
Okay. Give me if they'll take a day 3, especially because the Bucs are gonna draft at the back end of the 4th round.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really a fifth. There you go.
It technically is. It's one pick away from being a 5th round pick. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. If it's a day 3 pick, I would do it. I wouldn't do it if it's a day 2.
I'm with you. I think 4th is kind of the cap on it. I wouldn't be mad if they gave away a 3rd to do it, because I understand the plan. And again, sort of how
better get a day 3 pick back then.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like give up a 3rd and get like a 5th or a 6th or maybe.
Yeah. Get a 7th. Yeah. If you get Darnold in a 7th for a 3rd. Okay.
Yeah. You okay with that? Yeah. So Jason Light is now built up in his scouts, John Spytek and the like have built enough cachet with me where, like, even if I don't understand the move or like the move, I'm going to give it time to sort of pan out, and the upside of it is definitely worth a 3rd round pick, which is really a 4th round pick if you look at it.
That's right. It's one pick away from the 4th. It's one pick away from being a day 3 pick.
So speaking of the draft, sorry to step on your toes there, but if you could in this year's draft go and get any player, we'll say they have to, like, you can't get a quarterback. I'm gonna sort of scope it to the second half of the draft. Okay. So when you could say position group, but if you had to, someone's holding a gun to your head and you're like, you gotta go up and get somebody in this draft. But you can pick whoever you want to help out the team the most, either this year or in the future. What position group or what player are you going up after? I'm taking. I shouldn't say I'm not. You can go and get anybody but a quarterback, because that's just too obvious. Like, I'll go get Trevor Lawrence. Have him sit behind Tom Brady for 2 years. Okay, yeah, we're not doing that. No. Or Fields or Wilson
or Mac Jones.
Yeah, nobody.
Yeah,
you can go get Kyle Trask if you want.
I'll pass. I would probably. What's funny is like the guys that we're thinking of, or that I'm thinking of, are probably going to be there when the Bucs pick at 32. Like Barmore's probably going to be there at 32.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Oh God, I wouldn't.
Miners might be there at 60. I mean, being a Division 3 guy, but I might move up in the 2nd round and take Miners, but.
There's no talent out there. Like, you won't go get a wide receiver. I don't even know their names. The Smith of Alabama, because we're Bucs fans. We don't care about wide receivers this year.
I mean, we got plenty of wide receivers, and
still get a tackle.
And they still get I would probably. It's funny because I was thinking about what the Bucs need. They need interior on both sides, and those guys aren't the prize picks. They need interior offensive, interior defensive lines, and those aren't
they'll be there for me at 32.
They'll be there for me at 32.
Yeah.
I probably. I'm not moving up, and I'll never move. You couldn't pay me to move up to get a running back.
Well, I'm not paying you. I'm shooting you dead if you don't.
Well, you better shoot me, because I'm not moving up to pick running back.
So you don't have to pick running back. You can take anybody. Take a position. Think of it. What position group would you go get besides quarterback? Don't let having good players at a position prevent you from drafting great players.
I probably would move up for wide receiver, to be honest.
Okay.
I would move up. I would move up for a wide receiver.
I'd go get a tackle.
You get another tackle?
Well, Donovan Smith, if you look at it, who I'm more than happy with, especially because of his play the second half of the year, or more importantly, really the bye week. He's only guaranteed for next year. So they guaranteed his money this year, which wasn't guaranteed, and then they guaranteed money next year. And that's it. And so he's back on the, and he'll be 30, and then now we really won't be able to afford him.
Yeah.
Of course, you never know. The salary cap be $250 million by then. So,
Exactly.
so I would
then.
go get one of these like tackles that aren't nearly as lauded as sort of like the big four last year. And I'm not talking about going all the way up in the top 10 and getting Penei Sewell, but like Slater, another Northwestern guy. There's some guys out there that I wouldn't mind having in the hopper.
Yeah.
And that's where I would go.
Yeah.
I would go interior defensive line for sure, but there's nobody there. There's no there's no one there to go get because they're all already. No one's gonna. The only person who's gonna go off the board interior defensive line is maybe Barmore, and that's gonna be like off his last 6 games. Because if you watch like his last 6 games, which include the playoff run, he was a monster. Yeah, but it took all that time to get him there and to get him motivated and to not play bad. Like he's just so up and down. So
yeah, I saw a video of Marvin Wilson manhandling Mekhi Becton. That was nice to see. But that he's gonna be there.
He'll be there. He'll be there in the 3rd.
Yeah, he'll be there. He'll be there in day 2. So it's not like that's what I would be looking at. It's like for me, it's like, who are you moving down for?
Yeah, right. I'm moving down again. I'm moving down for picks next year. That's what I'm moving down for.
There you go. Move down for picks next year. I hate wrapping up shows on down notes, Ren, but I do want to mention that the Tampa Bay region lost an absolute legend when it comes to sports broadcasting and just broadcasting in general today, as the great Ted Webb, who you may know from doing mornings on WFLA radio for the last, 30 years. He passed away this afternoon, about 1 o'clock this afternoon, just before 1 o'clock, at the age of 72. Ted was one of the first guys to have a sports radio show in the market. He used to do a nightly sports show on WLCY, WPLP. He worked with Nancy Donnellan, who most people know as the Fabulous Sports Babe for a number of years. Just an absolute a peach of a guy, and had been ill for a number of years. Like, I've known Ted, and it's tough even mentioning him in the past tense. So I tend to still talk about him in the present tense. But I've known Ted 15 plus years now, and he had been on dialysis for quite a while. He had been dealing with renal failure. He had congestive heart failure. He had been suffering from dementia for the last year and a half or so. But a guy that loved the Bucs, loved sports in general here in the Tampa Bay market, and I just wanted to mention his passing, because Teddy was more than just a colleague of mine at iHeartMedia for 15 years. He was a close friend, someone that I could always trust would shoot straight with me, a great sounding board. Whenever I wanted to do something, I would always go, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And he would go, "That's good, but I would recommend X, Y, and Z." And so, I just wanted to mention, politics aside, because, the last, 20 years of Ted's career was all done, in the news talk political realm. And there's a lot has been made over the years, his fight with Ronald Reagan's son, Ron Reagan Jr., where he basically told them to come down to the parking lot and he'd kick his ass. Ted was just an amazingly fun guy to be around. Always had his little, He had like this little box that like made like fart noises that he used to mess around with that he would go after people. Just a character and a lot of fun. And I'm gonna miss him greatly. And I'm just glad that he got to see the Super Bowl one in his own hometown. His hometown team winning here because he was a Tampa kid. He went to Jefferson High School, the old Jefferson High School, not the new one over in West Tampa, but the old Jefferson High School, and has been around forever. So if you've probably been affected by Ted Webb in some way, shape, or form. If you've grown up here, or if you've lived here in the last, 20 plus years, you've definitely been affected by Ted Webb. So I wanted to send on behalf of the show condolences to the entire Ruiz family on Ted's passing. So I hate ending shows on bad notes, but on down notes. But I felt it had to be said.
Yeah, I've never, I don't know if I ever heard a Ted Webb radio broadcast.
You definitely would, baby, because it sounded like this.
But I've been listening to sports talk radio for a long time. I've heard his name. I knew that he was at iHeart for a while. I think I've heard Aaron Jacobson talk about him.
Yeah, he was a second father to Aaron. Aaron was Jack and Ted's producer for a number of years, and then when Ted retired, Aaron took Ted's spot.
Right,
and
right. So a radio giant here in the area, and not only in the sports world, but AM talk radio, news radio, and political radio. He'll definitely be missed.
So on that note, we will wrap things up here on this special Tuesday broadcast of the PewterCast. And again, you can always follow the show at the PewterCast and go to the PewterCast Live. But first, we go to the Ren Addiction so we can find out. Ren,
yes.
How do we get hold of you?
Best place to find me is on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football, but if your take is too hot and you don't want to put it there on the Twitter sphere, feel free to slide in my DMs and we'll talk about Buccaneers football there as well too. One quick announcement. It's not super duper finalized, but it's pretty much finalized. Almost like the I's are dotted, but the T's aren't crossed. In an effort to give something to Bucs fans during draft week, because we're not exactly sure what's going on. We have been invited, Steve and I, the PewterCast, have been invited to go out to Big Storm Brewing with Joe Bucs fan.
Ooh.
Ira Kaufman will be there.
That's right.
Steve Isfitz will be there. Maybe we can have you interview Ira.
Oh my God. Can I interview Ira as Ira?
Talking to Ira.
Ira, we got Ira Kaufman here. It's Ira Kaufman talking with Ira Kaufman. So Ira, tell me about Tommy Kuhn. You've got some good Tommy Kuhn stories. Yeah, Ira, you got to tell me some Tommy Kuhn stories.
So we'll be out there. We'll have our own table. We're not exactly sure what we're gonna do. I haven't really talked about it with Steve yet. About what we're gonna Carney, I should say, not Isbitz, Steve Carney. What we're gonna do, I don't know if we're gonna go like live for the whole entire draft for like 6 hours, or hit and miss. I don't know. Well, who knows? Like maybe we'll just turn the camera on and face the crowd and walk away. Who knows? But we're gonna be there. More details will be coming soon. So we're gonna be hanging out with Buck fans, drinking some craft beer, and having some gastro pub style food for the draft. That sounds delicious, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. And again, you can always catch the PewterCast at the PewterCast on social media. Check out thepewtercast.com, pewtercast.live. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Steve Carney, and check out my website for your favorite Rays baseball coverage at Under the Orange Roof.com and Under the Orange Roof, the weekly podcast that drops every single Monday. This past one, we talked with Steve Kinsella of Sports Talk Florida and my old colleague Jay Retcher at WDAE, previewing the upcoming 2021 Rays baseball season. So for Ren, I'm Steve. That'll do it for this episode
of the Pewtercast. And until next time, I'm not using my lineup, my normal sign off. I will say in the words of the late great Ted Webb, live it up.